Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Bragg. Here. Councilmember Spriggs.
Here.
Councilmember Patton.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem West.
Here.
Mayor Dedina is absent.
So I think we are better people because of the stuff you've done, Pearl Harbor ceremony, all the things at the FRA. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
And we got some swag for you.
And I want to point out to you, Mark, American flag belongs on this side of the right of the seat.
You know, he always keeps us honest, you know? Yep. Oh, I definitely want to get a picture.
Sure. Enough of my family. I finally had to give up my duty to branch city and after 25 or so years get transpired.
We all know you.
I appreciate it. And Lori, where's my keys? Ask her about that.
All right, we're gonna take it back. Thank you. We got a hat for Bill. We got a towel for you, Bill. A water bottle. And serving the border, the mayor gave you a book. in. So there it is. There you go. Well, thanks so much,
Thanks,
Bill.
Mark.
You have a great
Give
day.
it my dog. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, by the way, Mr. Landry, Bill, you're free to go. You don't have to wait through all the boring stuff. You can go.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet. All right, now we have the next is we're gonna present a proclamation by Fire Chief French in recognition of the National Preparedness Month. And Fire Chief French is gonna say a few words.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. National Preparedness Month is an annual event that is done nationwide every year, and it's to encourage people to prepare for disasters before they happen. So every month in September, they do that. The theme for this year's is disasters happen, plan now, learn how. And the way that we can do that is if you go to Ready San Diego, there's a lot of different links on there. You can set up a family disaster plan. You can register for Alert San Diego, which is an alerting system. There's mobile apps on there. There's lists for emergency supply kits and wildfire preparedness and a lot of other disaster preparedness tips on there. So I just wanted to get up here and kind of remind people that, now is the time to prepare. I just want to throw out a few stats here. A recent survey they did at the end of 2017 in San Diego County, only half of the San Diego County residents could evacuate their homes within 15 minutes. So, so this shows the importance of getting prepared. And only 38% of them have an emergency plan. So this kind of shows the importance of National Preparedness Month. And I just wanted to get that word out there and show how important it is.
And we're entering fire season right now. I know we've been on
Yes.
fire the entire year, but this is really your true fire season right now from
Yeah,
September
going to be
on,
starting
right?
here for the southern part of California.
Okay, thank you, Fire Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we're moving on to the consent calendar. I'd like to enter a motion to approve consent calendar items numbers 2.1 through 2.8. Vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Dedina absent.
All right. Moving on to reports. Discussion and consideration of resolution number 2018-7955, a disbursement request from the Boys and Girls Club for recreation costs in fiscal year 2018. City Manager Hall will give the report.
Mayor and Council, I have a very short slide presentation, but since we're throwing a few numbers around, I thought I would at least put them up on the screen so everyone could see what we're talking about. I think most of the community knows that the Boys and Girls Club provide the recreational services for our community. And in doing so, not all of the costs that are incurred by the Boys and Girls Club are covered by the fees that we charge for the recreation programs. And so what we have done in past years is we've been able to close that gap for that reimbursement. And so just wanted to put up a couple of numbers that you see here. Their total program cost of about $65,000 and their total revenue of about $22,000. And so there are costs in excess of revenue of about $43,000. And then there's also an additional request for scholarships that are given to kids that are either unable to pay or sometimes families that have multiple kids in programs, and we try to support that. And right now, I'm working with Ken from the Boys and Girls Club to get that verified, but that is the reimbursement request. We have also talked, and I think you saw in your staff report, we've asked the Boys and Girls Club, and I had a chance to talk with Ken about these as well. There's a few things we want to work on for next year to reduce some of the costs for the program. One is we do want to work to eliminate the possessory interest tax. We were charged that tax this year, and so we need to work with the Boys and Girls Club so that they can submit an exemption like they have on the building on the other side. Where their building sits now is owned by the city, the Boys and Girls Club that's over on Encina. But there's an exemption since they are a nonprofit organization, and we want to work with them to seek the same exemption, and that'll help us to avoid at least the $1,500 that are paid in the possessory interest tax. We've also asked them to implement some performance measures so that we can reduce the reimbursement costs in the future. Right now, the program costs are about a third of the actual costs for the program revenues are about a third of what it costs to run the program. And over the what is in your staff report is within 5 years, we'd like to reduce that to where it's only 50%. So the 50% of the program costs are covered by revenue. So we want to move in that direction. And then finally, one of the things that the city council has consistently asked for, and we would again ask the Boys and Girls Club to come and talk to us by January 1 of 2019 on what programs they hope to expand in the future so that the residents have additional recreation programs in the community. So that is the request. I know that if you have any questions of the Boys and Girls Club, Mr. Blinsman is here, can answer those. But just wanted to give you an explanation of the reimbursement request from the Boys and Girls Club.
No speakers left.
Ken, do you mind popping up here? Okay. Well, thanks for being here. Yeah, Boys and Girls Club has done great things for our city for, I mean, how many years now?
Since 1965.
1965. So 55 years or so. So we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
There is a big gap. I mean, obviously, you know, we're asking for a little more money than usual. And I'm just wondering, just like as an educator and somebody that does a lot of things with sports and Parks and Rec deals, like what is your mailer, say your mailer budget? I mean, or you don't even have to give me numbers. Do you send out mailers?
No.
And so there's other agencies, you know, throughout the local cities close to us. Chula Vista, we get mailers from them. City of Coronado will get like a mailer from them about the programs that they're offering. And then we see those, and they go one step further, is they give locals discount, and they can't even, if you're not a local, you can't even register yet. So basically, if you're a non-local resident of these cities, you kind of get the leftovers. And you know, I'm not saying we have to go that far, but I think if we could send out and notify people, these are the programs that we're offering, you know, partnerships with the schools. And I'm just trying to brainstorm some ideas that we can close that gap a little. You know, the partnership with local schools, discount for residents, I think it's a great idea, personally. And some sort of survey throughout the school district, or, you know, within yourselves, like what programs are really popular and what programs are working and what programs are going to bring in some pretty good revenue. And then how do you keep that program going and growing, you know? So this is just some ideas, you know, you don't have to give me a gazillion answers right now, but I was just wondering, even if we could just look at mailers or flyers, you know, do you think that is something that the Boys and Girls Club could do and to get more people in?
Yeah, absolutely. I know one of the things you touched on with the revenue and what's been generated at Sports Park, out of about the $22,000 that was raised there, 19 of that 22 was through adult leagues. So if we had access to more ball field time or court time, right now we play the league, the men's basketball league is up at the Boys and Girls Club gymnasium because the Sports Park gymnasium is too slippery, the floor is too slippery. And then we have a high turnover with our class recreation instructors as well. So there's little voids in between them, which is why we don't make a whole lot of money off the class registrations. That goes a lot to the instructors.
Right.
Our adult leagues are the ones that make some money. And if right now we play one night of softball and 2 nights of basketball. So if we can expand on that, we could make some serious money.
Well, I guess you know your plan now, right?
That's what. And also, it's good to note this is a little bit less than we asked for last year. But also we have the consideration, the sports park gymnasium was closed for a little over a month this year. We had to upgrade the fire extinguisher or the fire alarm system. The city redid the doors. They removed the music room that was really a big code.
Right.
So there was about a month there where we had no revenue coming at all. So with that insight, I think we did pretty good this year, considering.
Right. Well, those are just some ideas. I mean, I'm not chastising
No,
you.
no,
I think
not
you're
at
doing
all.
a
I
great
don't
job.
think that at all.
And then I'm all in on the scholarships. And I think if, you could provide those as many families as possible with scholarships, and, that would get even more people in, I got a scholarship, you should join too, and so thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to echo my colleagues' comments. That we really appreciate the work that you do and the contributions that the Boys and Girls Club makes to the community in general, but also regarding Sports Park. And I'm glad to see that the amount has come down. When you consider the closure days, it's even, as you pointed out, even better. I also echo my colleagues' reference to and your thoughts about new ways of both expanding your services to meet the needs of the community and finding ways to get revenue out of that as well. And I'm not sure where the area of overlap is on the use of the ball fields. But if there's anything that we can do to help you work out some sort of an arrangement there to get more of that time, maybe in the off season. They could be different seasons. I don't know. You're the professional, not me. So I leave that to you. But I think that, you've touched on an area where you can gain some revenue. And I think that's a good idea. We also know that you don't make a lot of money on youth sports. But obviously we wanted, and from the very beginning have thought that your involvement in our sports program would be, Sports Park would be a way to get more programs out to the youth as well. So I think that's something we're also very interested in. Thank you. Yeah. So appreciate your work. Thank you.
Councilmember Rag.
Thank you. Ken, thank you for being here and your staff with you, your board of directors. I see the illustrious Jim King over there. Thank you, Mr. King. It's always nice to see you in the audience. I've said this many times. We're all in this together. So when you're frustrated, we're frustrated, and vice versa. And so I think that, we sit and we look at this and we think, how can we make this better? What can we do? And I'm so glad that your staff and your board of directors is looking at that as we are. We envisioned a robust recreation department, and that's what we've tasked you with. However, I just don't think we're not there yet. We've got a long way to go. And I did have some questions, and thank you so much for the backup literature. It's always helpful. But I did notice that, like with the recreation activity scholarships, they were all for like karate and dance and taekwondo and yoga and sports camp, but I didn't see any revenue from those programs. And so I wondered about that. And then I did notice too on your register that there was a discontinuation of the fire alarm system. I think the last time a bill had been paid was maybe in March. So is that, what happened with that? Are we now paying for, is the city now paying for that? Okay. And then Cox Communications, do they donate that service to you?
No.
No.
No, they'll provide free internet service for children, but they do not provide free service for the adults or phones or the internet.
Okay, I thought that might be the case. So for my colleagues, with an upcoming contract, perhaps any way that we can get a little bit more bang from our buck from Cox Communications for this department, this program in our city, I think would be well worth the ask. I did notice on attachment 2, you had listed your board of directors, but an endowment committee. So what do they do and when do they meet and how successful are they? And
Our endowment committee, they meet once a year, and they're tasked with building our endowment up that will fund the Boys and Girls Club for infinitum. And they'll just continue to fund the Boys and Girls Club. Right now, we have about $1.3 million in our endowment program, and they've done real good on investing into some bonds and stocks, bonds mostly, that have done really well for us. And their task is to continue to grow that. We want to get a $3 million endowment, and that'll make sure the Boys and Girls Club is there forever.
that's an awesome answer, Ken. And maybe you looked into my mind to see where I was going with that. So then I see Mr. Broadway here too. So you have a resource development committee, and I think you're the chair of it, Mr. Broadway. So is one of the things that you're looking at possibly a rainy day fund, so that when there's an opportunity to seek a grant that has to have matching funds, you have that pool of money
Yes.
to do that.
Yes.
So the answer is yes, you have that. And do you have a rainy day fund? And I'm not going to ask you to tell me exactly how much is in it, but I sure would like to know if there's anything in it.
There is some money in there. It's
Okay.
called our special use fund. And let's say that we had a storm and the roof blew off the Boys and Girls, but we would have money to replace the roof.
Okay, so it's for capital and not for operational?
There's operational funds in there as well. We're going to be hiring a resource development person to help us raise money through fundraisers and grants. So that position will be paid out of the endowment program, the
Okay.
special use fund.
Okay. So having served in another capacity in our city as the executive director of our Chamber of Commerce, that was always, you're always chasing the revenue. You're always fundraising. And I know the Boys and Girls Club, when Bud Harbin was on your board of directors, there wasn't a day go by that Bud didn't think about some way of raising money for the Boys and Girls Club. So I would just like an assurance that that's still happening. We started this in 2013, and I was kind of thinking that, that we would start a weaning process.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we are. And honestly, Ken, this is an uncomfortable conversation to be having publicly, but maybe at some point we do start really seriously looking at that weaning process. Not to say that the city doesn't want to support a recreational department. We certainly do. That's been our commitment.
Yeah.
But I would just like an assurance that, like I said, we're all in this together. I know we are, but I think we have to, and Councilmember Patton touched on it, we need to start thinking about outside the box, other ways to raise money.
Yeah, we've had discussions with Mr. Hall about that, and he's been very open with us and talking about the future and what lies at Sports Park.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
55 years. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to apologize to former Councilmember King for not recognizing you at the beginning. So I'm really sorry about that, Jim. I should have. You are a good-looking man. There's no doubt about that. But Ken, thank you so much for coming. I echo everything that our council is saying, and I think it's important. When a good recreation committee that I think all of us want in all of IB is, where we can go and have, our citizens, adults, children going to a place where we're, doing all the things that we did as kids, and they're not there yet. And we really want to get there because I think it is such an important part of how we really make the moral fabric of our community. And some things that I think is ways of revenue that I just was throwing out there. I met a gentleman who he travels from Ramona to his club team travels from Ramona to play soccer on our artificial turf. And I don't know if I go, now that we have the dog park, I'm over there every weekend, more than every weekend, but every day. And that is such a lure for all of South County, all of San Diego County. And I think there's a way that could really become a generator of revenue that could be a really good thing for us. So I think that, yeah, I know you're doing some on there, Ken, I from what I understand, but I'd like to see more if you could generate that, because we could really do some incredible things on that field. It's a great, playing soccer on AstroTurf is a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's one thing. And then I also think that there's a big tennis and pickleball. I know you have some of them already going over to the sports park but I think there's more too. there was a great group of people that was meeting at the gym at Second and Palm. Yeah, and they were charging money to play pickleball in a parking lot.
Yeah.
So we might be able to really take advantage of playing pickleball inside a building and make that a revenue generator too, and then maybe even move on to tennis someday. So I think those are all great. I look forward to whatever you can do, and I do want to see us try to wean our way off this because we're not always going to be in an economic boom like we are now. You know, there's going to be times when it's going to get more challenging for all, not just us, but for you too as well. So whatever we can do to make that happen and make it better. But Ken, you know, I love the Boys and Girls Club. So, but all right. So I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 20187955.
I
you wanna
had
say
a
that?
question of staff
Oh,
before
sorry.
we went there, if it's okay. And that question is, we have a park and recreation committee, and I would think that they should have been asked to, or would have as part of their mandate, be talking to the Boys and Girls Club about ideas for expanding programs, raising revenue. That is a surrogate of this council. We created that committee to help with the oversight of our park and recreation program. So, you know, where are they on this? Why aren't they here? And what do they have to say about, you know, this? We should be sharing this work and this sort of creative thinking about, well, what do we suggest to them about closing a revenue gap? I mean, those are the people in the community that are the closest to this. So I don't know. I put that to you, Mr. City Manager, because I think, and I've said this before with respect to all of our committees, we don't sometimes directly hear from the Highlands Advisory Committee on stuff that they're working on. We sometimes don't directly hear from the Design Review Board on, you know, we may read the report as part of an action item. But it just seems to me that since we've created these committees, and they do have you know, a public profile, and they are part of how we are supposed to be delegating responsibility and work, at least to report back to us, that we should be hearing from them on matters that are relevant on the agenda to their jurisdiction.
Absolutely. I think we'll make sure that we engage the Parks and Recreation Committee more in this particular issue. I think that's a great suggestion. One thing I'll say is that Mr. Blinsman was actually a member of our Parks and Recreation Board, so we appreciate his service there as well. But I think that's a great suggestion, and perhaps when we talk about the expansion of the program, we're supposed to come back before January 1st. At least if you accept the recommendation of staff, maybe what we can do is meet with Parks and Recreation and make them part of what kind of programs we should be expanding at the sports park. So we can do that. It's a great suggestion.
I second the motion.
Okay. Vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Dedina absent.
Okay, moving on to 5.2, discussion and consideration of resolution number 20187956, authorizing contribution to the Boys and Girls Club for improvement to their facility located at 847 Encina Avenue in Imperial Beach. City Manager Hall, you're up again.
Well, I think I confused him because I put both my presentations on one PowerPoint presentation. There we go. Good job, Edward. Edward Washington, by the way, I don't know how often the council gets to see him, but we do appreciate, he does all the work behind, he's the man behind the curtain, so we appreciate all that he does for us. The second request is also associated with the Boys and Girls Club, and as you know, they are going through a major remodel of their building at the current time. The city is the owner of the property. So as the landlord of the property, the city has been asked to contribute and be part of improving the building in that location. So the request is for $50,000. And when I talked with Ken, I said a couple of things. One, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would like to have the city help them remodel their building. This is a little bit different. I want to really clarify that in a public meeting. It's that we are actually the property owners, and so we are a landlord there. So this is a little different than some of the other nonprofits in the community. But there's a couple of things that in the briefings with the city council, there were some suggestions that we place some conditions on that so that we are able to clean up some things that we'd like to see happen over there. One would be removal of fencing wherever possible. There are a couple of places where there might be a ledge or something where you might need to retain some of the fencing, but a majority of the fencing in that location can be removed and make that a much more open and free-flowing park. Veterans Park now has the dog park, soccer field, Boys and Girls Club, the new restrooms, and we want to keep that as free-flowing as possible because that's really all city property and all part of the park, and we want to make sure that it feels that way. We also want to make sure that we improve the outside appearance of the property. There has been at times, some outdoor storage and some other things that I talked with Ken about. We want to make sure that the outside of that area is kept as clean as possible. And then also some beautification of the building, a mural on the wall, something like, those kinds of things to where we can beautify the building and the park area. So as in return for the contribution to the Boys and Girls Club, we would like to see some of those improvements made as well. And appreciate some input that we received from the city council members on that item. So again, this is, if the city council chooses to support the Boys and Girls Club with this contribution, that would be adoption of ordinance 2018-7956, which would allocate unassigned fund balance for this project.
Council? Councilmember Spriggs?
Thanks for the report. This is a one-time expense, is that right?
That is correct.
Right. There was another amount that it has to do with utilities and building maintenance, I believe, that we haven't talked about, that is an annual payment to the Boys and Girls Club, or on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club. Is that right?
Yeah,
And wasn't that another $50,000?
It probably was. This is probably a little bit confusing, and I apologize for that. The contribution to this building update is for the Boys and Girls Club that is located in Veterans Park. The $50,000 that you're referring to is part of the sports park. We provide $50,000 for the water, the lights, and other improvements at the sports park. And that is correct. We provide $50,000 for that, and then the reimbursement we just talked about is in addition to that. This is a one-time contribution to help upgrade the facility that is located in Veterans Park, not associated with the sports park itself.
Okay,
sorry about that. That it is very confusing because the city owns both pieces of property and we're associated with the Boys and Girls Club. So thanks for that clarification.
Well, thank you for the clarification.
Councilmember Patton or Councilmember Bride?
Yeah, I'll go. So $50,000 for a building that size. I mean, if you really think about it, it doesn't. $50,000. It sounds like a lot of money, but building that size, it doesn't go far. And I've been in that building, and I've noticed a lot of construction going on there. And I was told that some of that construction was a lot of donations being given. And can you talk to like what we're not paying for that's getting done?
I'm probably not the most qualified, but maybe Mr. Blinsman could give you an idea because
I recall
we're not used to getting donations.
A lot of tile work going on in there, and so can you tell us, in addition to this 50,000, like what are some things that this is going to pay for, and then what are some things that are already being done?
Well, the donation will help with the stucco on the outside of the building, all the electrical work, the roofing, the flooring inside the gym or inside the building. Some of the things that have been donated are the architectural services, the drywall, the framing, the lighting, the drop ceilings. So we've been very fortunate to have a lot of alumni come back to the Boys and Girls Club and help give to the club, but we still need to pay for some things.
Yeah, it's looking, I mean, from what I've seen, it's looking really,
We're getting
really great.
We're getting close.
And here's the deal, like all programs that we have for kids in IB, I think our IB residents and IB kids and the kids that use these, they deserve the best. There's no need for them to be in shambles and to be in an area that's unsafe or isn't top notch. And so if you guys are making this top notch, then I'm all for this.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Ms. Bragg?
Thank you. Well, now I'm confused. So is this money going for the removal of a fence storage and a mural, or to what Ken had?
We are providing a contribution to the building update, but in exchange for that, and which part of it will probably be used inside the building as well. But we want to make sure that these items are taken care of on the city-owned property. We want to make sure that the fencing is removed. Want to make sure that the outside of the building is cleaned up and improved, and that we allow a mural to be placed on the building just to beautify the building. So, if some of this money may be used, in fact, I would imagine some of it will be used for the remodel project.
Okay, perfect. And would there ever be an opportunity to leverage this money to get other money?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the way you think. I like your
Yeah.
style, Ken.
That's
I
already,
have a request about the mural.
yes.
And I love our murals. However, they could be murals on any city in any coastal community. I would really like this to be IB specific for children. So if that mural could be children playing and participating in some of the wonderful programs that we have there, and making sure that their shirts say IB on them and Boys and Girls Club on them. So I'm not that I'm trying to design the mural, but I'm trying to design the
No,
mural.
you're hitting the nail on the head. We've already spoke with Todd Sands, and we asked that we want to do the mural. We are going to pitch in some money for that. It will be with children, with IB theme. And we just asked that we wait till November because we want to get the construction project up for the remodel project.
All right, Ken, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Sprague? Wow. Okay, that's a first. Just kidding. I also know that San Diego County is actually pitching in on this project as well. They contributed 50,000 as well. So I think I know that you've been actively going out and trying to get money at the county is. So I think that that's great news that they're pitching in on as well. So, and Greg, I talked to Supervisor Cox, and he was a big supporter. So
Yes.
I have nothing more. So I'm going to entertain a motion to adopt resolution 20187956.
I don't know if you want to use pen.
It's up to you. I mean, we're going to vote on it. I think we're going to. Do you want to say something? Yeah, come on up.
Here for Penn West, Honorable Council. Pleasure to talk in front of you. It's the first time since I've been gone.
We miss you.
No, actually a couple times. I just want to point out that this whole effort at the Boys and Girls Club came about as a result of remodeling the bathrooms. They were built in the 60s and they looked like they were built in the 40s. They were a mess. And on the board, everybody wanted to do that project. And as we were doing that, going forward, we changed some doors and we put in some wooden doors and some different types of casings, and it looked real nice. Well, George Broadway and I kind of started talking, and the board was involved. We kind of worked together on this. That we walked out front, and my position was, look, this building was built in the early 60s, and it looks like a plain brown wrapper. We need something that kind of gives a spirit of enjoyment to kids. Something has colors, it has different dimensions, instead of just a plain brick building. Kind of like Mar Vista High School, which really, pardon my language, pissed me off when Sweetwater School District came and painted it basically like a military institution. Of course, we are a military town in terms of that. I understand that, but you look around at all their buildings and they're pretty spectacular. Our gym is nice, but the main school, they fixed up the eating area and the offices, and the rest of it's kind of messy in between the buildings and stuff. It's really pathetic. So anyway, we came kind of looked at the outside of this building, and that's how this whole thing evolved. I have a friend who was an architect that I asked if she'd do the architectural work on it, and the board got on board, and we're so happy that they're supporting our effort. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. All right. So voting. We voted, right?
Please vote.
Voted.
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Degina absent.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to 5.3, resolution number 2018-7961, awarding public works contract to Frank and Son Paving Incorporated for the RTIP FY 1718 Street Improvement Project S18-101 and appropriating an additional $524,300 to the project budget from the RTIP FY 1819 Street Improvement Project S19-102 through a budget transfer 0720 TAC 25. Public Works, you are definitely not Public Works Director necessarily. No. All right. But you're going to give the report, I meant.
Yes.
Good.
So, good evening, council, city staff. And I'll say a portion of the name, not all the name. I'm here to present today on the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, fiscal year 17-18 Street Improvement Project. And to request council approval for the construction contract to Frank and Son Paving Incorporated. So what is this project? This project is a citywide street rehab project, and it totals approximately 2 miles, and there's street segments throughout the entire city. So the corresponding streets were actually selected through our pavement management program, and that program selects the streets that should be paved according to what's most cost effective. And this pavement management program selected the streets that you see on your screen. As I mentioned, it's about 2 miles of paving of street rehab. So about 75% of that street rehab is actually slurry seal. And slurry seal is an application of a mixture of oil and sand. So what happens is this application is actually placed over the existing asphalt, and it seals any cracks or gaps that are in the street in order to avoid any infiltration of water into the cracks or gaps and making the cracks or gaps larger. And eventually, if that's not done, water will eventually go through the cracks into the base and cause a failure of the pavement. So I was able to dig up this gem. This is from 2015, and this is Palm Avenue around 2nd Street. And this is an application of slurry seal. And the slurry seal is just about 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch. And like I said, it's mostly topical, but it's definitely goes a long way with the maintenance of our street. The rest of the streets, they're getting grinded down and overlaid with the new asphalt section, 2-inch section. And this is actually one of the streets that we're doing. It's Emery Street between Donix and Elm. So it comes to the point, if we don't do the slurry seal in time and we only have a certain amount of budget, then streets actually start forming cracks that are larger than we can actually seal. And there we would have to go in and grind down the street and put in a new section, new layer of asphalt. So when we were doing the assessment of the different streets, we also assessed the headramps that were along the streets to make sure they were compliant with the American with Disabilities Act. What we found was that 46 headramps were actually out of compliance with ADA standards. So this project will actually remove and replace the 46 headramps that are out of compliance and make them in compliance, and also this will also provide greater accessibility for our residents and visitors. So back on June 28th of this year, we went out to bid for the project, and we had a total of 5 contractors that bid on the project. They were all qualified, and Frank and Son Paving Inc. was the lowest qualified bidder at $775,736. So for last year, actually, when the 2-year budget was approved, we actually had 2 RTIP projects, 1718 and 1819. So the first one, 1718, which is this project, the budget was for 504,000, and the 1819 was for 524,000. So our estimate or proposal came in at 775,736. So it was right along, well, more than the first budget, but less than the combined. And what we're proposing is taking the budget from 1819 and putting it into the 1718 in order to be able to make this project a reality. And before going out to bid, we had an engineer's estimate. The engineer's estimate was 790,000, but it made sense with the upcoming projects that we have to go ahead and do as many streets as we can with this project. That way we can get those streets paved and we can focus on the other projects that we have coming up. So staff recommends that City Council awarded Public Works contract in the amount of $775,736 to Frank and Son Paving Inc. for the RTIP fiscal year 1718 street improvement project. It's S18-101. And we also recommend to authorize changes to the contract for an additional not to exceed amount of $112,564 for unforeseen construction changes, and authorize the appropriation of an additional $524,300 to the project budget from the RTIP 1819 street improvement project as 19 through a budget transfer. And open for any questions.
Well, thanks for the presentation. Any questions?
Councilman
Just-
Patton, if I could make one announcement. One of the roads is directly in front of one of the council members' homes. And so he, in an abundance of caution, has asked that he recuse himself. And that is why Mayor Pro Tem left.
Great.
I think that is this isn't my comment, but because you said that, and because we've all had recusal situations before, I think if this project was just the street in front of his house, I think that would be a fair case where a recusal would be clearly appropriate. But this is all over the city, and it's a big project, and it just seems to me that that's overly cautious that he recuse himself. Anyway, I think it's only fair that we sit when we can, because that's what we're elected to do. I just had a couple questions to ask you, and I appreciate the report. And the ADA compliance work that we're doing with regard to the curb ramps. I know a lot of them are too steep. In some cases, they're not even a curb ramp; it's just a curb. Do you have a sense that we're going to get 100% of those that need fixing done with this project, or are there still going to be some curb ramps that need to be fixed for ADA compliant?
For the streets that we assess, we will get the 100% head ramps completed. So what we assess is along the street segment. We go back to that slide. So along these street segments, the head ramps that touch those street segments, those are the ones that we assess, make sure that those were ADA compliant. So all the 46 head ramps will become ADA compliant, but around the city, there still will be other head ramps that won't be ADA compliant.
Do we have because we have a number of retired and disabled, number of elderly, a number of disabled vets, etc. And while we're concerned about having good bicycle trails and that sort of thing, I think this is also another area that we need to pay special attention to. Give a sense as to how many more of those we need to address as an action in and of itself to make every sidewalk accessible.
That's a great question. And actually with our upcoming Imperial Beach Boulevard project, all of Imperial Beach Boulevard will become ADA accessible. All the ped ramps that aren't ADA accessible will become ADA accessible. So we're looking at it when we do a project, we make sure that everything that we touch, we bring up to
Right.
standards.
Right. No, I understand that. And I think that's great that we're doing it. And that's normally what happens with ADA. If you touch something, it's got to then become ADA compliant. I think it's just what I'm asking is kind of a broader question of survey in terms of all of the sidewalks in our town, because this is something that can be a real impediment to the mobility of people who earned the right to be able to get around our town.
Juan, let me jump in a little bit. I'd state that there are likely hundreds of ped ramps around town that do not meet the current standards. We're required whenever we do a paving project to fix any that touch that paving project. That's why we're addressing these. I think what you're talking about is a much larger project that we need to talk about in a future CIP. Specifically addressing ped ramps throughout town. That'd be a wonderful project to do. But I think we'd be talking about that as part of the upcoming 5-year CIP plan as we get into the budget season for next year.
Okay. Well, I would hope that we could do some preliminary staff work on that so that we could actually get a sense of how much work, what expense, what kind of time phasing we would need to get that done, because I think that's just as important as the work that we're doing with with the alley paving and the street lighting. The other quick question that I had is how can you tell us a little bit about the process to identify the streets so that we're fairly confident that we're addressing the streets most in need first with the slurry project, the ones with the worst cracks, so that have been that way the longest, whatever the criteria are, it'd be good for you to articulate it for us.
Sure. And this is the pavement management program that we use. So not necessarily the streets that we're doing aren't necessarily the worst streets. And the reason that's the case is because what we do, the process is we have a certain amount of budget that we have, so we input it into the program. And in that program, we have all the street segments laid out in the city with the corresponding PCI, pavement condition index. So based off that PCI, if we don't do anything to the street, it's going to continue to decrease. And it gets to a point where if we don't do anything to that street, if it's in good or fair condition, it'll eventually be failing. And that's where the cost actually increases significantly. And just the number that I've seen is from doing a slurry seal, which is what we do to streets that are in good or fair condition, and to keep them sealed up and avoid any infiltration of water and further cracks, to doing a grind and overlay, which this project does 25% of the streets approximately. It's tenfold essentially from that perspective. But we input a budget that we have, and at that point, that program lets us know which streets we need to do in order to be able to maintain the streets that are in good or fair condition as that and not avoid. So it's a cost-effective strategy.
So this is like preventive. When you prevent further deterioration where you can, but some of the streets are beyond that point,
right? And
they'll have to wait for a more extensive kind of treatment as part of another RTIP project, perhaps.
Correct. It's both. So the 25%, we have PCIs of, just to give you a perspective, PCI goes from 0 to 100. So a couple of the streets, one of them is 32 based off the 2016 pavement report that we got, and another one's 43. So just to give some perspective, so those are streets that are in really bad condition, and the pavement management system or program let us know you guys have to. There's becomes a certain point where we can't put off doing those streets. We actually have to make sure those streets are done because they're actually going completely.
Okay, so I guess I'm a little bit. I appreciate your explanation, but you
Let-
already said that there are some streets that are more in need than are being reached with this project. So I guess my question is, you know, what's our approach? Just what's our approach?
Yeah,
in
our
terms of
approach
addressing
generally is the program is programmed to, one, go after our worst streets, but also to use a preventative, cost-effective means. And then let me just explain, like let's say we've got a street that's a 57 and one that's a 61. What we know, the program knows that once every 7 years, those streets, they'll get to a point, and the 57 one is pretty much going to take the same amount of repair, let's say a thin overlay, until it gets to about a 51. So in about 3 or 4 years, it's going to basically cost the same amount to fix that road. But what the key is that the program spits out is in that critical year when it's right to drop to a 50, and then at 50, it's going to take a thick overlay. The costs could be 50% higher.
Right.
It's telling you to hold off on that street till it gets to the next critical jump, and then catch it before it does that. So we might do a repair on a street that's a 61 before we hit the 57, because the 61, maybe it's got an even thinner overlay. It's much more cost effective to hit that street that year, let the other one age one more year, and then catch that one before it hits that critical. Basically, it just goes, thin overlay, thicker overlay, and then complete rebuild. Those rebuild ones, those are obviously the most expensive. We want to catch all the streets before they hit the rebuild number. And so that's why it's not necessarily just the lowest number first. It's got a smart program that kind of tells you, there's certain years you want to catch certain streets, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I only ask these questions because as I've gone around the neighborhoods, a number of people are concerned about their streets. And I've tried to give them my layman's explanation as to, why, how there's a system to prioritize. And, nobody is going to be satisfied if their street's a lower priority and isn't being hit this time around. So I appreciate your explanation. That'll improve my response the next time I'm asked. Thank
Everybody, every time we do a streets project, there's one unanimous deal is we know exactly which street to start on, and it's always my street. And then after that, we can do the other streets, but we know the deal.
Mrs. Bragg?
Thank you. I just had a couple of quick questions. What's the shelf life of a slurry seal? How many years are we looking at?
It's slurry seal is about between 5 and 7 years. So
Okay.
you can think of it almost as an oil change on your car. If it's maintenance, something you have to do. If you don't do it, your car might still run for a while, but eventually it'll just give out. So that's why we try to make sure we get it within that 5 and 7 years.
It's funny, men, well, this is really, I guess, sexist, but you used an analogy of an oil change. I was thinking of like the La Jolla lifestyle facelift versus a full-on facelift. Just the way I think. And the start date on the project?
The start date. So the start date is end of September, beginning of October. End of September, beginning of October. And this is a contract that's for 90 days. So that would put us at the end of the year. So October, November, December. So before the end of the year, this paving project could be completed.
Okay, and then concluding before any potential rainy season hits, perhaps in January, February.
If it hits before, we'll have preventive measures, the best management practices, BMP, so make sure all the storm drains are covered up and make sure no debris gets off-site.
Okay. And then does this use all of the 1819 RTIP money, or will there be some left?
So what we included is a contingency. So depending on, so obviously with any project, you don't want to use any contingency, but there's things that often go not our way or the contractor's way. So we stay with the contract. We do our due diligence before to make sure everything's looked at. But we do have contingency. So one of the things we can look at is if the streets that are set to get paved, we can potentially do other streets with that contingency. If that's what, we can, that's an option as well.
Okay, and would those be more slurry seals? Would it be more slurry seals or more ADA ramp? Or you wouldn't know it at this time, you
Yeah,
can't say?
at this time,
Okay.
it's hard to tell.
Okay. And then lastly, I did appreciate our Mayor Pro Tem stepping out. I always do appreciate when our council members err on the side of caution. So again, difference of opinion, but I think it's wise for us to heed our city attorney's advice. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, Madam Clerk, did we have any speaker slips?
We have no speaker slips.
Okay, so if that's the case, I entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2018-7961. Please vote.
Can we have an oral vote, please? All those in favor, please say aye. Motion carried by the following votes. Ayes, Bragg, Spriggs, Patton, disqualified West, Dedina, absent.
Okay. Yep, moving on to resolution, to agenda item 5.4, resolution number 2018-7960, implementing the neighborhood traffic management program, traffic warrants policy, and curb marking policy 0750 TAC 20. Public Works Director, Eric, Public Works Director Minnesili will give the report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Today we'll be talking about the neighborhood traffic management program and a couple policies, specifically a traffic warrants policy and a curb marking policy. I will state that it's about 150 pages of procedures and policies here. So I know this is kind of, we dumped it in your lap. There's no rush. If there's a desire to deliberate further on this item, we certainly would be happy to do that. But the programs are ready for review. Resolution 2018-7960 basically implements the program and the two policies I spoke of earlier. Neighborhood traffic management program. We get a lot of comments and issues. Residents bring to us a lot of common issues that occur in our roadways. And specifically, they're concerned about people failing to obey traffic control devices. They are concerned about abnormal traffic volumes on their neighborhood streets and speeding. The program provides a toolbox for us to kind of address some of these issues that come up. This toolbox basically allows for some traffic calming. Now, traffic calming it's intended to reduce potential for accidents, increase safety and convenience for pedestrians and other users of the street like bicyclists, reduce vehicular speeds just generally, and also discourage cut-through traffic. The highlights of the traffic management program are that it's objective and data-driven. So we finally, you see in the picture here, we've got our traffic sign that enables us to do a lot of analysis on our roadways. It provides reports like you see up in the upper right-hand corner, so we get an idea of what the speeding, let's say it's a speeding issue, what kind of traffic volumes we're seeing on that roadway, what kind of speeding is occurring, what time it's occurring, and we can compare that roadway's speeding versus other roadways. And we can see, is it a problem? Is it an overall city problem, or is this one particular street worse than the others? Program also kind of provides a step-by-step workflow to allow residents, staff, we know exactly, step-by-step as we go through the program to, know how to submit a written request, how that gets processed by staff before we issue a work order, and then how do we study the item on the back end. For the bigger toolbox items, there's a lot of neighborhood engagement and input. There's specifically calls out times for meetings and getting in front of council and getting these kind of bigger picture projects approved. But for the most part, we've got a lot of times we're dealing with basically phase one issues where somebody writes a request into the staff. We do some data analysis. We sit down with the sheriff and talk about, hey, how do you want to look at this data? How do you want to deal with it? And then we might do phase one stuff, which is pretty laid back and simple improvements. It might be like you see there, maybe we'll paint the speed limit sign on the roadway. Maybe we use a traffic warning sign, put it out there a few days a week to warn people to slow down. Maybe it's more speed enforcement. There's a lot. The toolbox is pretty extensive. I hope you have a chance to go through it. There's a sample workflow there on the left, 7 steps, pretty straightforward. Going beyond that, just traffic warrants. This has to do with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD. This is kind of the Bible for traffic engineers. This is a document used by most agencies. It provides policies, procedures for installation of a variety of traffic control devices, stop signs, crosswalks, that kind of thing. What this our policy that we put together here, it's generally extracted from the MUTCD. Standards, establishes the standards and procedures by which we review those requests. And obviously the idea is here is, to tie it in, to work it with the new traffic management program. Finally, curb marking policy. This is somewhat separate, but we did them all at the same time, so we just want to get in front of you guys. We get a lot of requests for curb markings in front of people's houses for red curb, blue curb. The policy is pretty straightforward. It just identifies conditions, locations that are appropriate for marking, and then it sets the procedures out that that we use to review those marking requests. Little drawing here basically shows you sight lines. This is something we do at an intersection. If we get a request to do some red curb, kind of tells you, depending on if there's parking or not, especially basically spells it out exactly when red curb is required and how much is required. So it's just an engineering tool. With that, our staff recommendation is the council implement the 3 policies, the program and the 2 policies. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Councilmember Patton.
Quick presentation.
How we doing?
The curb mark, and there was a lot to go over here, and like you said, there's almost too much just to come up with a set thing right now. But from what I understand, it's dynamic and it's changing, and it's nothing set in stone yet. Is that correct?
Correct. No, this is our first opportunity to give it in front of you. We don't have a traffic committee or anything like that, so that you're the corporate board.
Yeah, and I think that's good. The curb marking, can you explain? I know along I call it the beach streets that go from, say, the pier area, that core pier area, that go down to about 3rd Street, how there are many of those driveways that have red paint, just a little on each end, and then the street, it has designated parking spots for people. That was done a few years back, and I still can't figure out why, because what it did was, if I lived on those streets, I would be screaming, because what it did was it eliminated tons of parking. And I know you've driven those streets and I've driven them, but I haven't marked them all. But I know you want to talk, but I'm just curious. There's red paint there, and red paint to me tells me that maybe a fire truck or ambulance wants to park there. But every fire truck or ambulance I see, they park in the middle of the street. They don't need red paint to park. So can you tell me the purpose?
So what you're talking about in the policy just specifically talks about the driveway tipping, the red tips on the edges of the driveway.
Right.
And that's specifically done. We get requests from residents all the time for that. And that's where you've got a lot of people parking, and a lot of times they overpark and people will park, halfway into folks' driveways.
Right.
Without the red tip, it makes it a lot tougher for the sheriff to ticket and tow those folks out of the way. So we take a lot of requests for driveway red tipping, and it's a perfectly popular thing. People like to have that. We have no issue putting them in, and they work just fine. The markings on the roadway, the little T's that specify the parking spaces, you're preaching to the choir. I think that is a mistake that should be remedied at some point. And I think if we start paving roads in that street, I think we need to talk about that, because I've seen those T's, and that's useful for areas where you're paying for parking. You've paid for something, you should have a certain amount of space. Sure. Even a big truck can get in there. I think we are sacrificing, those are 20 feet, 18 feet long. I've seen you can get 20% more parking if you got that out of there. But it's a separate issue from the curb marking policy.
And parking's, as you all know, it's a common issue that we have. But the red tipping, I doubt very seriously that every one of those people that got their driveway red tipped asked for it. It was just done. It was just done.
Yeah,
so,
I can't speak to when those originally put
and that
back
was
in.
with Chief Clark, I believe. Anyway, I mean, just so it's not going to continue, you know, the piecemeal, we're just putting red tips everywhere.
We do them on request. If there's a desire to not allow red tipping, we can certainly have that conversation. But you know, there are issues with, and not just by the beach, but a lot of folks have, you know, enjoy that because.
And what's a width of a length of a red tip?
Per the standard, I think we're making them 2 feet long.
It doesn't. I mean, even if you made it 1 foot long, it'd still serve the purpose of you're in my driveway now.
True. I think with 2 feet, it gives people a little more room maybe to put their trash cans out and that kind of thing. But certainly we can, again, this is a fluid policy. If there's a desire to change that number, we'd be happy to do it.
All right. So I guess that was just something that's kind of bugging me. And then it's dynamic, like you said. Oh, traffic calming. You mentioned about lines and stripes, or even writing the speed limit down on the street to possibly slow. I saw something on, I can't even tell you where, but they had like 3D speed bumps.
Yeah.
So 3D speed bumps. I know it worked for a while, right?
Right.
So I want one, right? Let's see. Can you look for one of those?
You know, I saw that same thing. I know it wasn't. I think that was in Europe where they did that one. I'm a little concerned about some of that. It's a visual. It's certainly not part of the MUTCD. Let me state it that way.
Yeah, it's odd. So
it was cool.
All right. So yeah, just do some research now. All right, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Spriggs.
Yeah. I agree. This is a lot. And I have a couple comments that go to its good intention to engage the community. But I think it's a little bit overextensive. And I'll go into that. I also think there's some thresholds of speeding that we need to look at. And I'd like to just start with a real quick comment though about this red curbing and the designated T-striping or whatever we call it for parking. I've heard a lot of complaints about that, especially in conjunction, and I think the sheriff left, with the fact that if people are over the line, their parking line, they can get a ticket. So this is a point of aggravation for a lot of people in the community that I've run into who, you know, been ticketed for it, or have the alternative complaint that, you know, it just takes up, you know, too much of what should be available parking. I think the other issue around the red curbs is, you alluded to it in the presentation, sightline. So you can actually have enough of an angle, a view angle, to avoid getting hit if you stick your nose out to take a look. If there's a car parked right up, especially if it's an SUV, right up on your driveway, you're really just throwing the dice in terms of whether somebody's coming by right at the time you're easing out, even being very cautious. So there's that public safety aspect of it as well. I almost think that there ought to be a restriction on SUVs not being able to park next to driveways or street ends. I know there's a lot of people go nuts in the community about that, but one of the toughest things to do is to pull out when you can't see at all because there's a very large vehicle that's blocking your sight line. But that's for another day. On your phase one, I think this is where hopefully most of the issues regarding abuse on the roads and speeding can be taken care of. I think we would all hope that because it's the easiest and cheapest. And I really think that on one hand, the staff shouldn't have to do all the research because of one person making the request. I think it ought to be probably about five people. In the phase two, you have to initiate it with 10, and then later on a petition. I think that that's fine for phase two. It's a much heavier burden there in terms of what needs to be done, and you want a consensus and that sort of thing. So I think it makes sense there. It makes sense to have 5 in the phase one just to initiate the work. On the other hand, the threshold for speeding stated in phase one is a little bit more onerous than in phase two, which is kind of, to me, anomalous because it's over the you use base speed in phase one and the speed limit in phase two, and an amount over that to determine in each case whether there's speeding to be there's an action to be taken. So base speed is the speed limit plus 7 miles an hour over the speed limit in phase one. That's fine if the speed limit is maybe 45 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour or maybe even 35. But our neighborhood default speed limit is 25 miles an hour, which on our narrow streets where there's parked cars all up and down the street is fast. It's actually fast already, 25. When you add 7 miles an hour to that to get a base speed of 32, and then you have to exceed that in order to create a threshold where there will even be an investigation regarding what should be done about that issue. That's too high a bar, in my opinion. It really ought to be, the measurement ought to start with, the 85% over the speed limit. That 85% figure in terms of the traffic, just over the speed limit. Because on most of our neighborhood streets, it's already fast enough. So I would urge you to think about that as part of the guidance before we really implement anything. Regarding phase two, and this is about it. 10 signatures to get started. I think that the idea of having a petition to get 50% of the affected neighbors to sign a petition in order to really move forward with an action that that's clearly needed. It's already in phase two. It's clearly needed. Is too much of a burden on the community to move forward with that. It should be, just leave it at 10 signatures or 10% or something that, because we've already gotten to the phase two, that's a burden that's already been hurdled, and let's make it easier for the community to come together. You can always, with 10 people or 10%, you've already got a core of people who can bring everyone else into a community meeting and have a discussion. If that's the goal, is to really have a community engagement, community discussion about what are our options, where do we go, so that everybody understands the rules and the choices and that sort of thing. I think that's an excellent sentiment, but too high a burden to get to it. And the final thing is when does this come to the city council? And is it frequent enough for it to be once a year that a phase two or becoming phase three, whatever, that it comes to the city council for approval so that we can, I guess, aggregate a bunch of them? When you think about, the kind of community engagement that you're talking about, once you get people engaged, we shouldn't make them wait 7, 8, 10 months a year for the matter to come before the council. That's counterintuitive in terms of the process of trying to get community engagement, some kinds of local initiative in terms of how to solve the problem, and then they've got to wait, a number of months for a council meeting. I think we have to think about that a little bit. I don't have the answer, but maybe we have, 2 meetings a year or 4 council meetings a year just to where this is an agenda item and we can get to them quicker. We don't have any idea how many of these are going to be coming forward, how many are going to get that far. But I just think we shouldn't structure it so that people have to wait that long after they've done all this work and come together as a community. You know, we could have also a dollar cost threshold for what has to come to the city council for approval. If it's something, say, under $20,000 to fix it or to put signage in or whatever, maybe we don't have to act on that as a city council. Maybe that's something that, you know, Public Works and the city manager can decide on. I don't know, let's think about that as well. Anything we can do to make it easier for these traffic remedies that have been demonstrated, proven, the facts are there, the analysis has been done, to actually get something done. The simpler it is, the less procedure, I think the better. So those are my thoughts on how we could streamline this a little bit and at the same time at the front end, get a few more people rather than one to initiate all of the work. But I really like the effort put into this, and I think it's in the right direction. And I've been, like all of us on the council, one of the top priorities in our neighborhood is speeding and other, you know, and running stop signs and that sort of thing. So I'm glad we're coming up with a procedure to allow the communities to move these problems to the city government.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Councilmember Bragg.
Eric, thank you for this. And there's 3 members of the audience that are not city staff. So I just wanted to show you, Ernie, that includes you. This is the document we're talking about. So there's a lot to it. And I was accused for being a transportation geek, but I loved it. And I'm hoping the community does too. Eric, this is a pretty impressive, just a lot of information. I'm hoping to get this out to the community as fast as we can, like you, Mr. Spriggs. I think that their input is going to be just invaluable. Some of this is quality of life issues as well in our neighborhoods. You know, it's not just speeding, but it's also quality of life. And that was important to me. I was hoping, Eric, that you would share just a little bit. I know you've had our new piece of equipment out and about. That's really going to tell the story in a way that maybe nothing else can. I would encourage my colleagues to, and for you, Eric, to push in actually buying another one of these. I think you're already eyeing one that will test bicycle movement and pedestrian movement, because I think it's going to be important going into the future. I really would like to see when we get one that can do that, that could tell us in real time, in data time, especially around some of our bus stops. You know, where are those people? They're getting off the bus. Are they being safe when they disembark? Are they jaywalking? What are they doing? And as a municipality, what can we do to improve that as far as crosswalks or markings or whatever? So I know you, and I hate to put you on the spot, Eric, but you're a pro at this. So you had this piece of apparatus out on a street was because some residents in one of the streets were saying people are speeding. So there's your segue. Would you kind of talk about that?
Well, that's exactly what it does. I mean, we put it out there. Most of the time, it's not saying anything. I think last week we put it out. We use it for a lot of different things. In fact, I had it out on the bikeway. I had it on Bayshore Bikeway a couple weeks ago to post some warnings for folks, but also to see if it could count bikes. And it was doing it because I was getting text messages on my phone that people were doing 30 miles an hour on that road, on that bike. So you can actually set it to let me know if people are speeding, you know, beyond certain numbers. I tell it what I want.
That was during the Bayshore Bikeway,
Exactly.
the Bike to Bay. Yeah.
Exactly. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. I did write it.
It has the ability to take a picture if somebody really violates the speed, so be aware. But that's exactly what we're doing. So then I've got a year's worth of requests for folks that came to me and said, hey, take a look at the speeding that's going on in my alley. Take a look at, speeding in front of my street here. And so I'm just now, with the machine now, we're putting it out there. I'd like to get it out there for about a week. It does the data analysis. Then I sit down with the traffic sergeant, maybe every couple weeks, and we just go through that data. And it's a beautiful machine. It tells them exactly what time certain people or folks are maybe violating the laws. A lot of times I'm seeing it, 5 in the morning, people getting up and getting out of town. But so it's got a lot of capability. I know it can't count pedestrians. I would love to have another one that did. That's a fantastic idea. And it'd be nice just to have another message board just for our big events. If we've got, we do a lot of big events here. My guys will use it. It can still point arrows and that kind of thing and get people out of the lane. So it has a ton of capability. It's really nice because it's objective, right? It's just giving us data. And that's why I like this. It's why I like our pavement management program. It looks at the hard numbers, and that's what I relate to anyway. So did I answer it a little bit? Okay.
It did, Mr. Minicelli. Well, one part though, there was some complaints from some neighbors saying, "Oh, these people are speeding at 25 mile an hour," and what was the
The
what was
reality
really going on?
is sometimes it's a very emotional issue, and somebody will tell me people are doing 40 miles an hour in their alley, and then you put it there, and the average speed's 8 miles an hour, and it maybe tops out at 12. So it is nice to be able to present those back to them and say, hey, look, this is what we found. If that changes, we're happy to come back out. If we see something, I think you mentioned, Councilman Spriggs, if the 85th percentile is, if the 85th percentile is over the speed limit, we got an issue there. I agree with that. I think if I'm all about, we can change those numbers down. I think maybe a percentage makes sense. Maybe if you're 10% over the speed limit across the board, then that'll be one way to address higher speeds versus lower speeds. But people appreciate the data, so I give them the report itself. I have no problem with doing that, and they respond back, hey, thank you for looking into it. If things change, they let me know, and we're happy to send it back out there. It's just that I have one, so we've got a lot of streets in town, and we're moving it around as quick as we can.
Right. And you are sharing this with our sheriff's department.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Last question. When you have this piece of apparatus out, it's not just for one day. It's not for 24 hours. You're gathering a week's worth of data, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I'd like to see as a week.
Okay, perfect. So when do you first envision getting this out to the public?
I'm ready to go forward with this.
Okay.
So
perfect.
I'm ready to move.
I like
But
your
I
energy.
do want to make sure we get some consensus on some of the, the minor points, and then make sure that it's what we want.
And I did appreciate the fact this is not an ordinance. We're not enacting this with an ordinance. You used the word fluid. I think I forget what word you used, Mr. West. But so changes can be made. It's a work in progress.
Built right into it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Director Chile, I think that this document is awesome, and it's finally something that we can actually. So many people have come to me with, oh, they're doing this, oh, they're doing that, and now I finally have a document that I go, hey, here's where we're going, and this is how we're gonna take care of it. And we can finally put it in our residents' hand, and we can actually make people. This makes them more involved in the process and makes it even a better process, in my opinion. So, and I second Councilmember Bragg's idea. We need 2 of those signs desperately. I think when we kind of did it this weekend to make people aware not to do some bad things on the beach, litter and stuff like that. It would have been nice to have it on both of our major thoroughfares. Yeah, and shuffle their feet. But on 2 of our major thoroughfares, the major ones going in our city, I think it's super important to have that. I am interested. You said that you got the data. I'm just going to call it out. It was on Daisy Avenue that you had the sign a couple weeks ago that they were concerned about speeding. How did you make it aware so everyone on that block found out about that information?
I haven't sent it out to everyone, so I get one email usually. I've been using the person who called or emailed is typically who I'm sending that data back to. If there's a desire to make it more spread, we can certainly look into how to do that.
Okay, that's what I was hoping you'd say, because I think it's important that if we're going to put it out there on the street and we actually make the neighbors in the neighborhood, we can send a little flyer to each one of the houses and get, hey, we have the data that was on your street. This is what we're looking at. Please come to your office or come to an open house and really get that information in their hands. Because data is knowledge, and it'll make people more aware. Where it's more fun.
Mr. West,
yeah.
So is this going to be online? People will be able to go to our. But I agree with you. On our city newsletter, put the information out there. People would love it.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
And the other thing, teas. Oh, please, as quick as we can, remove those. I was coming back from surfing 3 days ago and this morning and got just annihilated by a person saying, hey, these teas are, we're not, and it's in our areas that I call traffic parking vulnerabilities by the hotel. You know, those places that are people are, and the residents are feeling the pinch on that. And I think that I know we can go and get about 20 more percent parking if we remove those T's at the end. I am concerned about your staff and being able to take all this data, and you're already doing a lot of things. Is this to get the data to you? Is this going to slow down your staff even more?
Well, I'm the staffer
I know.
doing this right now, so it's very easy the reports are very easy to produce. This is just flowing into our workflow. I'm not going to ask for more staff related to this, but
I'm not saying that it shouldn't, because I actually think that this could be something that we could use a low level staffer to start out with this and really grow this program, because I think it's got some really good legs for the future. So
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Speeding is those 3 or 4 people that you hear them zooming by, and that's when they're saying, well, everybody's driving 40 miles an hour on our street, and it's really not, because the average person isn't. They don't pay any attention to, they don't even see or hear the ones that are just driving at a normal speed. So to me, we just need to figure out a way to not ignore, because the averages are going to take those 40 mile an hours right down to under the speed limit. And that's not going to address the community's problem.
And I'll state that the program, the reports do spit out the top, it'll every hour, it'll tell me who the top speed was for that time. So it certainly doesn't ignore these outliers that are doing that. And then if we've got to, again, when I meet with the sheriff department personnel, if I see, we can easily tell at 4 o'clock every afternoon, one person is hitting 45 miles on a city street, it becomes plainly visible. And then it even spits out a report that kind of just gives them exactly what times the sheriff should be kind of looking at enforcement on these particular streets. So I think there is a way to go after these outliers, and I think it's an excellent point.
Excuse me. Just to augment that, we can certainly take a look at sort of plotting these in our GIS as well, and started to get even more data-rich sort of spatial analysis going on. And so then we take that, and then we might be able to deploy some of the sheriff personnel in some of the hotspot areas. So getting this data is allowing us to think a little bit differently, because we're like, well, what if we did this? So by taking that data and then throwing it into a layer, we'll get even smarter.
Lastly, I think I'm also interested in making sure that our communities that normally don't complain about things that are going to get this traffic sign to it as well. I mean, we know that the majority of the complaints are coming from certain parts of our city. There are parts of our city who don't complain at all, and we need to get that sign in there get that to the people and say, hey, this is what we've seen in your neighborhood, and just to give them so they feel like they're part of the solution. So I think that's important as well. So, all right. And Ms. Pratt.
Well, Councilmember West, since I'm the only council member who is from East IB, let me assure you, I complain enough.
I didn't say it was only your neighborhood. All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2018-7960.
subject to the comment so that we get some of the
Of
comments
course.
we've made incorporated into the,
Of course.
I move that. Then.
Yeah.
Move that.
So you want to include the comments into adopting the resolution for the record. Yep. That sounds great. All right. So vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Dedina absent.
All right. Item 5.5, adoption of resolution number 20187954, authorizing the city manager to ratify the MOA with the San Diego County Office of Emergency Services, OES, for the use of the wireless emergency alert, WEA, message system during a disaster, which is TAC 0250 TAC 30. You are definitely not public works.
All right.
Tonight?
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yeah.
City Council. I
Thank
just
you
wanted
for-
to give a brief description of what this wireless emergency alert system is. This could have went on consent, but I figured it was more important to kind of get the word out because right now there's Alert San Diego, and that's an app that people can sign up for their cell phones, and it does landlines at the same time so that they can send out an emergency alert to, an area or to a group of people. What this wireless emergency alert system does, and it's a federal wireless alert system that's kind of monitored by them, and all the county OES people are adopting it, and they're having all the cities ratify this MOA with each city. So what this alert system does is you don't have to sign up for it. It will hit every cell phone in an area that is having the emergency. And right now, if there was an emergency here and we went with this system, it's not going to get rid of the Alert San Diego. They're going to be using both in conjunction. But what this system does is it sends an alert to every cell phone in that general area, whether you're signed up or not. So if you're visiting our community from Arizona or from another state, or if you're a student that just lives in that area and is not signed up for it, it will send an alert warning to you also. So you do not have to be signed up for this system. A year from now at this time, they'll be able to get it down to maybe an 1/8 of a mile area. So right now the alert might go out to the whole county and whatever repeaters it's hitting. So a year from now, they can probably get it down to an 1/8 of a mile so you can hit an area. So if there is a wildfire alert for the East County, it might go to everybody right now. So a year from now, it'll get a little better and they can define it. So I just wanted to kind of explain what this system is and how it can be used. So if you have any questions.
Madam Clerk, do you have any speakers left?
There are no speakers left.
Colleagues?
So in our community, this could be like a tsunami warning that would hit anybody who's in IB.
Yes.
Right away. That's way better than what it is right now.
Yes.
Way better.
Yeah. So it's not just
If you're not
hitting the people
listening to
that
your
live here,
radio
it's
or
hitting
watching
everybody.
TV, you're just toast right now. But with this, we all have a chance.
Yes.
It's a great way to put it. Thank you.
And especially the ones on
You're all
seatbelts. No,
toast.
just kidding.
Miss Bragg.
The type of emergencies that it would alert people to, would that include like a gas leak in that 1/8 of a mile area? People in that area would be alerted, of course, a year from now, but what are the types of disasters that would a gas leak?
Right now, they're saying it's more for the bigger disaster type ones, and they're leaving the other ones to, like the Alert San Diego. But I think eventually this will be for every emergency. And I saw in one of the charts, it actually listed some of the things, and I didn't get down into the weeds on all of those, so I can come back and give you a better answer on that.
So if let's say we were here in Imperial Beach and something happened, would you be the one to make that call to this alerting company or this
Yeah,
system?
so what we would do is we would go through our dispatch with the message we want to put out there. That would go through our dispatch. Then that message would go to the sheriff's department, which would actually be the ones putting the message out.
Be able to put their own messages out as well, say active
Yes.
shooter or anything like that
Yeah, they would be.
down the
Yeah.
road.
So it's actually going through the sheriff communication center.
I've worked on these in the years I was at the university on the EOC team there, and the problem is always the delay to get from the person who has knowledge of the threat through the chain of command to the point of dispatch, and then the system works fine because once the message is right and approved language and whatever, it goes out immediately. But the problem is that distance from the individual who understands that there's who is on the scene of an active shooter when it starts or gets word of it as soon as it starts to getting word out, getting the message to actually get into the system to get out to people to avoid that area. So I don't know that it's not really a question, it's a comment, because that's really where the challenge is in all of this is the initiation and construction of the messaging and getting it to the point where it goes out, not necessarily the mechanics of the system once it gets there.
Yeah, and what they actually do too, and I might not have put it in with the packet, but they do have a request form, and it's actually a pretty quick plug in the boxes, get the message out. So when we send this message to our dispatch center, they just fill in the boxes real quick, and it gets that message out even quicker. Yeah.
Good. All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 20187954. No vote?
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Dedina absent.
Moving on to item 5.6, resolution number 20187957, approving and adopting various personnel adjustments and amending the city's FY 201719 salary schedule and the appointment management and confidential salary and benefit plan, and resolution number 20187958, approving the Fifth Amendment to the employment agreement between the city and city manager Andy Hall, 05 1020 0520 -75 052060 053060. And Deputy City Manager Cortez will get the report.
Good evening again. I know that was a lot. It's basically housekeeping things, but because we do have an agreement for executive, our government code requires us to have it on, on the regular items. So, two resolutions here. The first one, again, routinely, we constantly monitor any new positions that we have to add, delete, compensation, benefits, etc. So the first resolution, which is 2018-7957, established a new classification for assistant fire marshal, and the salary and the job description. And the second one is the environmental program specialist, again, salary and classification. These have been met and confirmed through the labor management team and our labor group, SEIU. It is also important to note that it does not add to our FTEs. Again, this is long-term succession plans. If we do any in-house adjustments, there are some parameters and some education that must be completed. We're just forecasting and preparation for retention. The second item is resolution number 2018-7958, and this is to approve City Manager Andy Hall's Fifth Amendment contract. There is a staff recommendation to make a change to the resolution on the following items. This is to increase the deferred compensation on the catch-up provision to $6,000 and the monthly car allowance to $600. I apologize for that. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Madam Clerk, do you have any speaker slips?
No speaker slips.
Council? All right. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953C3, this item includes salary and compensation adjustments for management personnel. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2018-7957. Vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Now I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2018-7958.
Is that with the staff requested changes for the car allowance and the catch-up provision? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's what.
Thank you.
So 2018-7958. Second, we have a second, right? All right, go vote. All right,
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Dedina absent.
okay, so I'd like to adjourn the regular meeting. Thank you. Thanks for everybody coming out. Buddy. So small.